Good afternoon. My name is Greg Lockwood, and on behalf of the team here at the BC Centre for Employment Excellence, as well as the BC Career Development Association, I would like to welcome you to our webinar today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the BC Centre for Employment Excellence, it was created over a year ago with funding from the provincial and federal governments to act as a research and knowledge-sharing organization for BC employment service providers and employers. The Centre's mandate is not only to do innovative research, but also to find ways to share that knowledge and best practices with BC practitioners and employers. The BC Career Development Association is a nonprofit professional association whose mandate is to provide essential networking, education, and training service to develop the knowledge and skills of its members, thus enhancing their effectiveness for serving their clientele. The BC Centre for Employment Excellence created this webinar series as a way to reach out and connect with practitioners. Through the series, we have been highlighting new research by the Centre, but are also tapping into the knowledge and expertise within the employment services community. We invite you to view the video recordings of previous webinars that we have posted on our website. Today we are pleased to feature Sylvia Metz of the BC Career Development Association and Family Services of Greater Vancouver's City Centre WorkBC Employment Services Centre, as well as David Schulte of Langara College's Self-Employment Program. Sylvia is a certified career development practitioner with over 15 years experience in the career and employment field. She brings a strong commitment to the employment services through her role as business manager of the new EPBC Employment Services Centre, operated by Family Services of Greater Vancouver. She has extensive coordinator, practitioner, and leadership experience through the delivery of employment counseling, vocational rehabilitation, case management, and facilitation services to unemployed British Columbians. As Vice President of BCCDA, she brings her experience and vision to support its desire to be a progressive leadership body. Dave's reputation has grown strongly in the community as he works hard to help others achieve success in business. With over 20 years' experience as a business trainer and advisor, he educates new entrepreneurs and sets them on a path to success. In recognition of his efforts, he was appointed to CIBC's Small Business Hall of Fame. Dave is currently the program coordinator of Langara College's Self-Employment Program. Before I turn it over to Sylvia and Dave, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. The presentation will last approximately 45 minutes. Due to the high number of participants, we will be muting the audience throughout the presentation to ensure audio quality. We encourage you to use the questions feature on your dashboards to submit any comments and questions. My colleague Sean and I will be compiling the questions for Sylvia and Dave to respond to throughout the presentation, and we will also leave 10 minutes at the end for further discussion. And we continue to experiment using the raise hands feature. So during the discussion at any time, simply raise your hand and we will unmute you for you to ask your question or make your comment through your microphone. We are recording the webinar and will post the video on our website with future opportunities for everyone to continue the conversation. If you lose your internet connection during the presentation, please reconnect using the link emailed to you. If you lose your phone connection, redial the phone number which appears under the Info tab and rejoin. And now I would like to turn it over to Sylvia and Dave.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sylvia here. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, taking time out of your busy day and over your lunch hour. I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So now we've had some introductions. Dave is going to go over the self-employment in BC, some of the benefits and challenges of this, identifying good candidates, and then I'll take you through some key considerations for the specialized populations, and then some specifics around the WorkBC self-employment program, and some steps for self-employment candidates. And then Dave I'll turn it back over to Dave, and he'll take you through some factors for success in self-employment. And then we'll do some concluding thoughts, and we'll open it up for questions, as Sean was saying.
Well, thank you, Sylvia. Perhaps we'll start with taking a look at some of the stats and figures around self-employment in BC. And as far as self-employment entrepreneurship, BC leads the country, and our statistics are higher than the national average on many factors. Many people are not aware that 29% of BC's GDP is generated by small business, right? And nationally we're looking at 27%. So a lot more of what we see being produced in British Columbia comes from small business. We also see that 84.2 small businesses exist in BC per 1,000 people, whereas nationally the national average is 69.3. So again, we're more accustomed up here to seeing small business. So there's a difference in the economies between British Columbia and, let's call it, Eastern Canada, which are more larger, older, traditional corporations. And what we see as BC is really is an entrepreneurial-driven economy driven by small business. Nearly $17 billion of BC's exports, right, which accounts for approximately 55% of all the goods exported out of BC, comes from small business. I know everybody's thinking, when you think of exports, you're thinking of mining, you're thinking of forestry, all of these big traditional industries, when in fact we see it as small business which is doing most of the exports. And I might say, and those numbers don't include the grow-op operators, which is obviously another form of entrepreneurship, but one which is not considered legal. So we added that. We know we could almost double that export figure. We see small business is paying really 32% of all the wages in British Columbia, and small business is creating 56% of all the private sector jobs. So we're beginning to see the effect that self-employment and small business is having on our economy and on job creation. Some of the other interesting statistics out there that you see in BC is that 37% of all people who are self-employed are women. So BC, again, is much higher than the national average. And when we see our self-employment rate expressed as the total percentage of all people who are employed in BC, it is 18.5%, where nationally it's 15.4%. So we see a higher percentage of our population, British Columbia, is self-employed. Now, one of the most interesting things that we're seeing happening right now in the growth of self-employment is in a group we are now calling the seniorpreneurs. So these are people over the age of 55 who are starting businesses, right? It is the fastest growth sector in British Columbia. So we're beginning to see a lot of people taking early retirement. They are stepping out into business. Many of these people are doing it for altruistic purposes. There's a life goal, a mission that they're looking to fulfill. Other people are doing it to supplement their income. So we're beginning to see what I think what these statistics tell us is that self-employment is a big, important factor in BC's economy. It's a big, important factor in creating jobs. And we're seeing a lot of people are doing it very, very successfully, and we're seeing that these businesses are responsible for an awful lot of the exports out of the province. So, some of the benefits of being self-employed.
Okay, Dave, thanks. So some of the benefits around starting one's self-employment program, as Dave alluded to, a number of them, going at your own, if you will, it can address certain barriers to employment, which is always one of the key factors around looking at self-employment is what is it that I'm trying to address. So as Dave mentioned, the seniorpreneurs, that's really an opportunity for, if age is a factor, or if you're in a low-paying position and you really want to make some extra money, so if your wages, that self-employment can supplement that. If you have some really great skills and experience, you're able to take those and run with them sort of under your own steam and really apply them in the way that you would like to. Provides, if you're unemployed and you have a good business idea that you think might fly, then it's a really great way to get yourself back into the workforce. It can also address the carousel cycles of employment, and people that are in seasonal employment sometimes, or you want to get really steady movement forward, it can address that. And also if you're underemployed, you have some high skills and but you're in a job that's really not utilizing those as well as you would like them to, along with the lower wages, it's a way that you can address that and move forward. And with that, you can see that you can control your own future. You have a little bit more control over your finances and your time, and you can work much more independently than you can if you're sometimes in an organization. Also, if you work from home, it's a way to generate income while you're working from home. Say you're taking care of your children. You have, in this generation at this point, there's a lot of sandwich generation with, aging parents. So it's also a way to work from home and still be able to include that very important lifestyle balance so that you're caring for either your parents or children. And as Dave mentioned, fulfilling a life purpose. Some people, it's really important. They really want to own their own business and really make a mark in their industry. So it's really fulfilling for their mission or their dream. And sometimes it's a small business on the side, and that's in addition to whatever work that you're doing. So it's some income supplementation. So those are a lot of benefits around self-employment, but certainly it doesn't come without challenges. So a couple of those, or a few of them are, it's like you really are doing it on your own. It's a small business. That collegial circle that we have in an organization when you're working with a team, that's pretty much reduced to you. You're the one that's wearing all the hats now. So you're the finance person, you're the administrative person, you're the salesperson. So you're really called on to draw on new skills. So it's a great learning opportunity, but it's a pretty big challenge to ensure that you have the capacity to do it all at the same time. So I'll turn it back over to Dave, and he'll walk you through what is a good candidate with all those benefits and challenges. What does a good candidate look like?
That's a good question, Sylvia. As you look at people and identifying who is right for self-employment, there's a lot of different factors. Certainly, timing in one's life, where you are, your readiness to take things on. There can be a whole host of things, but I would say for individuals, it really probably the most significant factor for them as an individual choosing self-employment is they have to feel that this is the right time in their life to be doing it. So what do we have to have? We have to have an individual who is really suitable for self-employment. And what does that mean? That is a real desire to be independent. And there is a group of people out there, a percentage of the population, approximately 20% of the population that we know out there, that stagnate in employment. They can't stay employed because literally it's like being buried alive. They cannot work under that restrictive. They have a need to be free. So they have a strong desire for independence. Right? It exists within them. Right? And it's one of the things that causes them to stay out of work or become unemployed because they can't exist in that environment. It's just the wrong thing for them. They need to be able to call their own shots, so to speak. And so we're looking at about 20% of the population who really fits into this category. The other things that they have to have, qualities, characteristics, one of them is a willingness to accept risk. Because there are no guarantees with self-employment. So you have to be willing to accept the risk that goes along with starting your own business. So willing to accept risk means you're also willing to learn about risk. And willingness to learn is one of the key factors. Risk can be managed. But you have to be willing to learn all the traits that there are to be that you need to acquire to get into business. So that becomes a characteristic that I would suggest as something that the audience would want to look at is if you're looking at somebody who has the potential for self-employment, they have to have a strong desire to learn about it. Other things that we would look for, we say we have somebody who has a business idea. And that business idea can come from anything. Maybe something that they've been doing on the side. It could be a hobby, right? But they've thought about something. So they have an idea that they would like to be able to go forward on. You also have to look at their background and their skills. Are they a good match for this particular business idea? Do they fit? Or is this something way out in left field, unrelated to what the individual has done before in their life? If there's a strong mismatch, chances are they're not going to be really successful in self-employment. So the business idea should be a good match with their skills and their background. The individual should also have done a little bit of background research, some preliminary research into their idea. And the questions they want to answer for themselves, or what you would want to suggest to these people is, look, is there enough of a market to support it? Remember, we can train somebody. We can provide them the training, but what we cannot create is a market that doesn't exist. So the individual has to go out there and do a little bit of background. They can, perhaps it's internet research, or they can see, are there other similar businesses out there? And if there's a market, then you know you can go out and you can fight for your share of that market. So will the market support it? Will it allow the business to become viable? The second thing we have to look at, and what they need to understand, is this business sustainable? Right? For how many years? What is the prognosis? What is the market outlook? So in other words, are we at the beginning of something, the beginning of a cycle, or are we at the end of a cycle? So the sustainability of the business becomes very important, because then you look, if you're going to be self-employed and you're going to make this investment of your time, your energy, your money, and resources, you want to be sure that this business is going to be around for a few years. So sustainability. And the other thing that the individual needs to look at is, will this really support them financially? Like, what is their financial objectives if they want to become self-employed? So how much money do they need to earn? Does that business idea, right, present them with the opportunity to make that money to achieve their financial objectives or other objectives that they may have? So that's essential and very, very important for people to look at, and anybody who's looking at self-employment should have a pretty good understanding of that before they pursue the next thing. Sylvia, you want to talk about some of the specialized population?
Certainly. I would imagine that the word, the specialized populations, I mean, that's a term that we use in the employment program of BC to identify a number of categories of individuals that I think there's 7 within this specialized populations category. And within that, I'm going to speak quite specifically about persons with disabilities, persons with multiple barriers, and within that, there's mental health, physical disabilities. Those are the things that I'm talking about in terms of key considerations for specialized populations. Because in those particular groups, self-employment might be the best option. For example, someone who has a mental health issue, they have an anxiety disorder, and they have a really great business idea. They're having difficulty working in an organization because of the level of anxiety that gets created in this kind of stressful environment for them. And so with this business idea, they can actually work from home. So it's really important to recognize that we need to ensure that our view of a person's specific circumstance doesn't cloud our ability to see their ability to do self-employment and be very successful with it. It could be the very thing that they need that would create the success for them. But there are some key considerations within that a career practitioner just needs to be aware of. So it's what kind of individualized support does that person need? So it's really that kind of in-depth assessment, looking at what potential accommodations would this person need to facilitate having this idea go forward. If they're not able to leave their home for some reason, I know this is a bit of an extreme example, but are there some accommodations that could be done in home? Do they need some equipment to ensure that they can do things online? For example, I had somebody who was injured severely. I was back when I was doing some work with WCB a number of years ago, and he had completely broken his back. It was just completely immobile, but he did training online through home. This was many, many years ago when training online was not really the thing to be doing yet. So it was about getting the computer, it was about setting him up and getting in the resources. So very, very viable. Also, there's ensuring that, what's the possibility of getting some specialized assessments to assist the individual in recognizing what their skills and abilities are and what their strengths are, what their educational background is, and how that can lend itself to a self-employment opportunity for that person. And then looking around for funding and space and workplace accommodations, which I'll talk about in the next section here, which is really leading into the WorkBC self-employment program and what some of the opportunities are for individuals to do to get some of those supports and accommodations. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the eligibility in terms of specifically looking at the WorkBC self-employment program that is offered through Langara. That's a partnership that Family Services and Langara has within what we call the city center catchment. So every WorkBC Employment Services Center has a self-employment service provider that follows these same rules or policies within the WorkBC employment program of BC, self-employment program. Many of you are probably familiar with the eligibility criteria, but I'm going to go over it just for those who may not be familiar with all the acronyms that we're using here, such as EPBC. And so eligibility for the self-employment training that is provided for City Centre through Langara is individuals who are currently on employment insurance, or they've received employment insurance within the last 3 years, regular employment insurance, or they've received parental or maternity leave within the last 5 years. Or if a person has a disability. So you'll notice in specialized populations that is a very inclusive opportunity. It's funded by the employment program of BC, and participants, based on their eligibility, are able to receive financial supports while they're establishing their business. The Langara program provides 100 hours of business skills instruction over a 2-month period, so very intensive instruction, and it's in 2 phases. The first phase is 10 weeks of very specific training where an individual creates a business plan and develops the skills to run and manage their business successfully. And then in phase 2, it's into the business launch. And that launch is supported by business advisors and the self-employment program for the entirety of that program. So it's overall 48 weeks of business support, ongoing support with the program participants, with a lot of intensive training. There's a minimum of 10 workshops in all aspects of business, running and operating a business for every individual. And for persons with disabilities, there are various options that can be looked at through working with the case manager to provide the kinds of supports and accommodations that an individual might need. Which then leads us into what are the steps for self-employment candidates. So how do they access Langara's program? And the very first thing that an individual needs to do is to access their WorkBC Employment Services Center. So in the case of City Center, that is through our office, Family Services office on Davie and Burrard. And in various parts of the overall province, each catchment has their own employment services center. So an individual would access their local employment services center and speak to a case manager so that they would get more information around their eligibility for the self-employment program. And so the case manager would do a preliminary kinds of needs assessment, make sure that there are certain things that they have, they are eligible in terms of the employment insurance aspect of the eligibility. Then they would get a referral to the self-employment program. And so that's specifically for us, that's how we do it. We, formally make a referral to the Langara program. For those who may have self-employment programs that are within their employment services center, they would have their own processes. So right now I'm speaking specifically about how it works between Family Services and Langara. And so we do a referral to the self-employment program, and Dave and his folks take individuals through an orientation session, which gives them lots of very specific information that they need to understand what they're getting into. It's not a simple program. It is very intensive. It requires a lot of time and attention. It's not to be taken lightly, and Dave makes that very clear, that this is not a walk in the park. It takes a lot of energy. And then there's a completion of an employment assessment, a self-employment assessment. So it'll go into further detail around the business concept and the requirements to. Dave, could you just say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, really what we're doing is we're assessing the individual's suitability for a self-employment program, right? Are they ready for it? Have they progressed far enough with their idea? Is the individual's skills and background a good match for what they want to do? So it's an assessment of the individual and their readiness to go to a self-employment program. And then if we say, we feel that individual is suitable, we go back to the to Sylvia, to the employment center, and we say, yes, this individual is ready to go. They could go ahead and produce a business concept. And which is really the next step now, which is now the individual really lays out, which is a proposal on their business idea. And it's a 10-question proposal, which they're putting on the various elements of what is your business idea, who's your market, your competition, what are the opportunities out there, how do you think you're going to get your market, where do you want to locate, things like that. And the individuals then put forth this proposal, which they're laying up their idea, their estimates of how much this is going to cost them to do it. So it takes them a little bit further down the road, and that way we've got an idea of what their business is really all about. We take that concept then, and we have an independent selection committee, which then reviews all the business concepts. And they select the concepts that they think are suitable, right, for the self-employment program. So these candidates look like they have the greatest opportunities for success. And then we refer those candidates out back to Family Services, in our case, for final approval or yes, no-go decision
yes.
on the candidates.
And David, Sylvia, just a couple of questions coming in from one of our participants. First is about eligibility, and they're wondering, is it 3 to 5 years from the EI claim start or end dates?
So in the first case, if it's a regular EI, it's 3 years from the date, from the end date of their employment insurance. And for parental and maternal leave, it's 5 years from the start date of their employment insurance.
Great clarification, thanks. And then the second question is 100 hours of business skills. I'm not sure if that's familiar, but is that part of the first phase, the 10-week training?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so at this particular point, we are, it's come to Family Services or the Employment Services Center for the go, no go. And so if it's a go, and it's actually the go, no go, it is mostly go, in terms of the self-employment, because individuals who do come to the WorkBC centers and they're interested in self-employment, they've already done some fairly significant consideration around what their specific situation is, and they have a strong desire already for self-employment. So it's a rare case where someone would not be, have some kind of once they've gone through that business concept and all of that kind of detail, then they're just really even more solidified in understanding about what their self-employment opportunities are. And so it's pretty rare to have a no in this case. It's often an eligibility issue more than it is a business idea issue. And so we do try to provide other kinds of services for individuals. If it is a no, then we do try to find some ways to support those folks.
So let's take a look at some of the factors for that create success in self-employment and some of the things that people need to be aware of. And the first thing is the pariah rule that we need to address, and that is the 80-20 rule of success in business. And for those who don't understand what that means, what that rule says that 80% of all new business startups will fail in their first 5 years. Of the 20% that succeed, 80% of those will fail in the next 5 years. Now, those numbers sound absolutely atrocious, and you go, why would anybody want to go into self-employment with those kinds of numbers? Well, we have to look at where those numbers come from. Those numbers come from people starting a business without having any business plan, no business skills management, no training. As you know, the K-12 system, we don't teach our children anymore how to even make a household budget, so much less try to manage a business. So a lot of people have a dream, a wish, a desire, or they get laid off and pay, and I'm a trades guy, I got my journeyman's papers, I'm going to go and start a business. And they go out without any business skills training, and unfortunately it's only a matter of time before they make a series of mistakes or a fatal mistake which causes their business to go down. So what do we know? What we know is that business training and support dramatically improves the success rates. And what do we see with the self-employment program? We've been following our graduates of our program for many years. So what do we know? We know that 5 years after graduation, 60% of our graduates have succeeded in business. Now, that's not 100%, but 60% success rate as compared to 80% failure rate is a big turnaround. And many who go on to, in the success rate, go on to build more than one business. They go on to build many different businesses and succeed in that way, and they're beginning to fulfill what they're doing. So self-employment really brings about success. And what is it that brings that success to people? This is what they need to understand. You can't write out a business plan on a napkin, right? You can't write out a business plan on a sheet of foolscap. This is what happens to many people in trying to start a business. A business plan is a critical part, and it's a skill that people need to learn. It's really defining where you want to be, where you want to get to, and then working your way back to where you are now. So you're creating a plan, which is really a step-by-step process to get from here to there with your particular business. So having a plan. How many of us would want to go out somewhere, let's just say get on a boat, and the captain says, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea where we're going. I have no idea which direction we're taking. Right? How many of us would want to stay on that boat? Right? We could wind up in a lot of trouble. So you have to have a clear plan of where you want to go, and that's part of the necessity of training. But a plan in itself is insufficient, because if you lack the skills to be able to execute that plan, what good is it? I could go out and I could buy a plan. So for example, I could go out and buy a blueprint to a house, But do I have the framing skills? Do I have the mechanical skills? Can I drywall? No, I don't have those skills. So what good is that plan to me, right, if I don't have the skills to go along with it? So a plan is one thing, but the next thing to create success is to have the business management skills. And the more of those business management skills that you have to better manage your business, the more likely you are to succeed. So you can execute the plan that you've created. But another component that really contributes to the overall success, people, is advisory and mentorship. And this is having people that you can go to, that you can reach out to, experienced people in business. Right? When you're faced with something, a question, right, and you don't know how to deal with it, or you've encountered something, someone you can talk to. And one of the things that I think that the business advisors and mentors give to people starting out in business, no matter what your age is they teach you how to make good business decisions. They help you learn things, and that's an invaluable skill. Okay, what do I do here? Your natural tendency might be to do this, but you'll find that your advisor is your alter ego. You know, that's some of the devil's advocate that makes you think, oh, well, gee, that could be consequence. That may not be so good. And in the process of doing that, you learn to make good decisions. Now, the one thing that's different between the self-employment program and some people may have heard of business incubation, which really is just an extension of self-employment and providing additional mentorship and guidance for people for 3 years. And when you see businesses that go through a business incubator, the success rate is 87%. 87% of all businesses come out of an incubator succeed. Why? And that is because the people in there have gotten through all the fledgling parts of business. So in the end, what is it that's going to create success in business? Is it your idea? Maybe 5%. 95% of success is going to come from having a plan, having the business skills, and having advisors and leaders and mentors who can guide you along the way. That is what's going to create success. And that's one of the things we encourage people to do is before you jump into this, acquire those skills. And that's the purpose of the program, is to give people the skills to go on. As I said earlier, because once people acquire these skills, their ability to start another business and another business is there. They have all the skills, and they see an opportunity in the market. They seize it, and they're able to create success with it.
Okay, I believe that you're talking about a success story. You had a success panel yesterday morning, so I wonder if you could just share one of the success stories with us.
Well, yes, I'm pleased to. I really enjoy bringing our past graduates from the self-employment program to come and speak to people who are just in the process of developing their business. And yesterday, one of the presenters I had is let's call her a mompreneur. She wanted to be able to stay at home and take care of her children, right? Not have to send them off to daycare and go to work. But how do you create money, right? When you're staying at home taking care of your kids, how do you create income? Well, she happened to have a hobby. And that hobby was taking a child's drawing, like a picture of a child, and turn that into a softie, like it's like a toy, like a soft squeezable toy. So she decided to create an online business with that. Anyhow, that business caught on. Her site went viral, and she has all the business. She only opens up her site for a few hours each year to take orders, and inside of those few hours, she has all the business she can handle. The entire year is booked, and the rest of it she has to turn down. So she's looking now at ways of being able to expand her business operations and going into many different areas. With others, I've seen, I like the mompreneur stories. Jane, another one of our graduates, she started off by doing office fitness. And then she sort of graduated that idea, and she says, what do you think of having a drop-in dance studio? And it's a little different from what she was doing, but fitness or dance, I love passion for that thing. She opened up 4 dance studios in the Lower Mainland now. She has, and I think she's recently sold one of them off. But she's got these iDance studios. She did all of this while raising 4 children. It is fantastic. I mean, and when other people hear what you're able to do, being a mom, a stay-at-home mom, and building these amazing businesses, things that create income and growth. And there are so many others out there who are branching out into more areas, and they're free to do that. I just think it's so exciting to see what these people are able to do and the employment that they're creating as a result. All the people that are employed in those businesses. That's fantastic.
Okay.
And just a question from Sean here.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Sean Draft, the research coordinator at the center. You've been speaking about some of the attributes and skills that clients need in order to succeed in their self-employment. But from a practitioner's perspective, it seems like, as a practitioner, if you're interested in supporting your clients, there's some additional skills you would require. You almost need to be a business coach. You need to be able to look at some of their plans and assess whether they're realistic or not. And I'm sure you're getting ideas from all over the place. What are some of the key skills that you've had to acquire yourself, or you've had to see develop among your staff to really succeed in helping your clients be successful in their own business ideas?
I'm just going to interject because I think there's two questions there from my perspective. One of them is certainly for the self-employment program. How does a career practitioner, when a client comes in and they're interested in self-employment, what is the assessment process that first you would need to go through? And then it's when it gets to the self-employment program and Dave's folks, what are the additional assessments that go along? Because it is the career practitioner who does that initial assessment. And so certainly in our center, one of the things that we're trying to get very clear about is that the career practitioner assesses from the eligibility perspective. Does the individual meet the various policy requirements to even be considered for the self-employment program? So some of those things are, of course, the EI eligibility that I just mentioned, but there's also the component of, has this person already started the business? If they've already started the business and they've got things rolling, they would then not be eligible to participate in the program. So a case manager would need to, a career practitioner would need to know those policies to ensure that the client is not being referred to the self-employment program and potentially being set up for disappointment. Because once they go through the self-employment orientation and business concept, and it's a very rigorous process, and to come down to the very end and discover that you're not eligible for that, it's really important for a career practitioner to do that initial assessment and look at the skills of your client right at the outset and really have that discussion around their readiness for the self-employment. And then they're better prepared for the kinds of information that the self-employment goes through. And then it goes to Dave, and he puts them through the ringer.
Yeah. And the key things that we focus on when we're looking at a client in terms of their suitability for self-employment, one of them has to be their background, right? In other words, it matches up with their business idea. So that's a big thing. So I think most career counselors would be able to see whether or not somebody's background, their history, and what are they saying on their resume or the CV, the work. Does it really match up with what they want to do? Do they have experience in this industry? Do they know what it's about? It's one thing going, say, I go to France and I fall in love with the idea of a restaurant that serves macarons and liqueurs, right? But I've never been a waitress or a waiter. I don't understand anything about the business, and say, come back, well, I want to try and start that business. There isn't a match. But for somebody who's got some experience in the industry, that's really an important thing because they have a much better idea of what they're getting themselves into. So that's an important factor out there. The second thing that we have to establish, and we look at very, very closely, in that, is there a market? Can you provide some evidence of a market? So if you go out there and you start building this business, that there's dollars for you to gain in that business, because a lot of times people have business, that's an idea for a business, but it's not a sound business idea. There is no market. It doesn't exist, right? And if they're going to get into a pioneering process, it's not like you're going out there and you're fighting for market share. You're looking at something you're going to be working at for 5, 6, 7 years before you start to see anything coming back, because there's nothing been developed. So that's really not the goal of the self-employment program. I mean, we're looking at transitioning people literally in a year into starting to get to be self-supporting. So there's got to be a market there for what it is that they want to do. And that's an important thing. Another element that I personally look for in people is passion. A passion for what they do. And the reason I say that is because of the requirement that it places upon an individual starting a business. In your first 3 years of going with your business, you're going to be working 60 to 65 hours a week. There's not going to be any vacation. You are going to be glued to that business. Your family and friends are going to go, what happened to you? Did you fall off the planet? And you have to have a real love for what you want to do to be able to work those kinds of hours. And when you love and you have a passion for that, it doesn't even feel like work. You're excited to do it. You get up in the morning, and when people come in and we do the interview with them, I can see it in their eyes that they are passionate about what they want to do. They have the fire, and that's commitment, that person is going to give it their all. This is not just sort of poured in the storm. I can't find a job, so I'm going to toy with self-employment. That's probably the wrong career decision to make, because they're going to find themselves really going from the kettle right into the fire. They're going to go, that was a horrible mistake. So a passion, a love for what they want to do, because it has to sustain them for those first several years until the business is really rocking. And I say starting a business is literally like giving birth to a child. Like, hey, here, take care of yourself. No, it doesn't work like that. That child is going to put a lot of demands on you until that child is able to start taking over some of those functions. And this business is the same. It takes a lot of commitment. So that's why when I'm looking at people, I look at their passion, their love for what they want to do. And again, career counseling may be able to spot that individual. Mm-hmm. You see a passion in there for someone, then you know that they're prepared really to do what it's going to take to make it succeed. Hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. And another question has come in just back to the timing and the process. And I know you addressed this earlier, but the question is about how long is the process from the initial meeting with the case manager to getting the approval? And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two, approval points. There's the approval to enter the self-employment program, which lasts about a year, and then another approval after the program's over. Is that right?
No, it's actually there's an approval to go to the just to begin the process of what we call the self-employment orientation and assessment phase, and depending on it's different in each employment services center because your business processes are whatever it is that they are. The eligibility criteria is the same, and each of the employment services center uses the integrated case management system, the ICM. So there's an eligibility approval process that goes through the ministry using the integrated case management system, the ICM. And so depending on how quickly that works in your particular area in BC, will sometimes determine the length of time. So we recommend anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks starting the process prior to the start date of the employment program within your area. So for example, Dave, yours is starting in January, correct? And so we've processed pretty much as many of the self-employment programs as possible. By mid-December, everything is done so that we are clear, because there are approval processes that are constrained by the technology and some of the procedures required by Service Canada and the ministry. So that's the first process. So are they eligible? So then they go through the self-employment orientation. It takes time then to go through the internal processes where the Employment Services Center will then give its final approval of the application, and then, okay, now they're accepted into the program. So off they go. So then at the 10-week phase, Dave then determines where they're at in that 10-week phase. Did they move through that very specific 10-week phase, and are they recommended to go on to the business launch phase? So at that point, there's another recommendation from the self-employment program.
Okay. Can you give a sense of completion of each of those steps? You've talked about the final success, but do you have a sense of how many people are making it once they're determined to be eligible? How many are making it to that, I guess you call that a proposal phase? Is there quite a big drop-off? I guess that's my question.
No, very little drop-off, actually. Yeah, I think between the expertise that's there with the career practitioners and how well they do their assessment, the candidates that are forwarded to the self-employment programs are really quite prepared, and then the rigorous process that they go through with the self-employment and orientation within each individual self-employment program is really quite in-depth and comprehensive. So getting to the acceptance phase is probably, I would say, probably 99% of individuals get through that phase and then move on to business launch. I think it's probably, 98%. It's very, very little drop-off. Yeah.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Okay. So if there are no further questions?
Not at the moment, no, but we do encourage folks out there to enter their questions into the question box. You've still got about 5 or 6 minutes for you to ask your questions.
Okay, so while we're waiting to just consider a little bit, I know that's a lot of information and various pieces that we've put at you in this hour. So some concluding thoughts that, as Dave was mentioning, there's really better than average opportunities in BC for successful self-employment. And Langara itself has been a long-term self-employment program, just has done some extensive work around improving the successes for individuals who go into self-employment, and also to provide information for candidates to really be aware of their choices and the kinds of resources that are available to them. So around lessons learned, there's many. There's many. June, maybe you could share a few you've learned yourself.
I think the big thing is the awareness. It's people becoming aware of options, aware that self-employment is a reasonable choice. I know that it's not something that's taught in the K-12 system. I certainly don't remember going to school and being taught that self-employment was a viable thing to do. The only way I understood that is that my dad had his own business, and my dad came from a very large family, and family of 13 kids, and all his brothers, except for one, were all self-employed. And I saw all these people being very successful, being self-employed. Now, it's not a genetic thing, but what it does is it makes you're aware that's self-employment, but when your thinking is biased or skewed, in life, that self-employment really isn't an option. It's risky and it's things. What we need to do is be aware that it's not as risky. That training and support can make self-employment such a viable and happy life for a lot of people. Because a lot of people feel liberated when they are self-employed. They're happy, they're making the kind of money that they're doing. And I see many people just like little things, like for example, like an unemployed bookkeeper. What's a bookkeeper going to make? $16, $17 an hour, but they start their own business and they make $35 and $45. They're much happier financially doing it. And what did they have to do? They just had to learn the business skills to be able to get their own clients. And their financial, what's happened is their financial life, they've doubled their income, right, just by becoming self-employed. So when we begin to think of it, look at it, if we get the right training, then there's all kinds of possibilities. So I say that the people out there who are advising others who are still looking, for career change or what choice do I have, is to really consider self-employment and if it's right for them and what it could potentially bring to them. Okay.
And Sylvia and Dave, I think we have time for one more question. It's actually from our very own Susanna Gers, the Managing Director here at the Center. She worked on a research demonstration project called the Self-Sufficiency Project, where they observed that income for self-employment opportunities tended to be at two ends of the scale, where many were earning low income, and then there was some also at the higher end too, but nothing really in the middle. In your experience, what have you observed on income generated from self-employment, especially for more vulnerable populations? It's a bit of a loaded question, but do you have anything that comes to mind on that?
It really boils down to the individual. It comes down to the individual and their belief in themselves and what it is that they really want, knowing what they want to attain. The struggle with people is many people ask them, what is it that you really want? How much is it that you want to earn? And whether or not you believe in the law of attraction and those things, but creating a plan and putting it in place, knowing what you want to earn. And I find that most of the people that are clear on that achieve those income goals, no matter what their background, where they come from, how much money they have to start out with. I've watched people having to sell furniture to fund some of their business, the things going that they have. But they created, they made it happen, and they earned the income. So it's really, it boils down to the individual and being very clear about what it is that they want to earn and then putting themselves on the path for that number. You can't say, I'm going to start out and hope to get that. You've got to say, here's my plan. If you want to say, my plan is to make $60,000 a year. Now we put together a plan, and you work with your business advisor to produce a plan. How much does my business have to generate in order to pay me $60,000 a year? And that's what it boils down to for most people. And that's where you see the disparity, is that some people are very clear and others aren't. And that's where we have to focus on getting people to that point, because then they will, for the most part, generate what they set out to achieve.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dave, and thanks to you, Sylvia, as well, for a really great presentation today, which I'm sure has introduced new insights and ideas about self-employment to many of you out there. Thanks to all of you for attending the webinar today. We have recorded today's session, and we'll post the video of the presentation on our website. Please check out that page and continue the conversation there. So if you did have a question that you would like to ask, I'm sure Sylvia and Dave won't mind taking a little bit of their time to address any of your questions or comments. You will receive an email shortly with a link to the presentation and video. Unfortunately, we have found that the system does not record those of you connecting only by phone as having attended. So you may receive an email saying that we're sorry you were unable to attend. And if that's the case and you would like a confirmation of your attendance, please contact us at the address in the email. As always, we welcome your input and feedback, and we would also appreciate any suggestions you have for future webinar topics. Now, one last note before we end today's session. BCCDA's 17th Annual Career Development Conference, in partnership with the BC Centre for Employment Excellence, is taking place on March 7th and 8th, 2014. And next year's conference will feature a CfEE stream with more details about that, as well as the entire conference program and registration on the way shortly. And I can let you know that one of the sessions in our stream will be on social financing, and you'll hear from some of the leading experts in this area, including the Social Impact Bond Project from Rikers Island in New York. If you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter and watch our website for the announcement of our January webinar, which will be on the topic of prior learning assessment and recognition. And yeah, Sylvia just has...
Sorry, I just have one final little note for anyone who has their Certified Career Development Practitioner designation. Please remember that this webinar is considered part of your continuing education credits, and to ensure that you record that for your recertification. All right?
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. So with that, on behalf of the BC Centre for Employment Excellence, as well as the BC Career Development Association, thank you and have a great afternoon.